In 2003, a man who'd just made a fortune killing fraud for PayPal named his next company after a magic crystal ball from Lord of the Rings. People laughed. A spy stone? Really? 20 years later, that company helps governments find people who don't want to be found, and it's worth tens of billions. The joke, it turns out, was the business plan. Here's what nobody tells you about Peter Thiel. The smart bet wasn't the software. Any room full of engineers can build software. The smart bet, the one almost nobody else made, was on us, on how scared we were about to get and what we'd hand over to stop feeling that way. This is the story of how one man looked at a terrified country and saw, very clearly, a business. Chapter 1. The man who read the wizard books too closely. To understand the crystal ball thing, you have to understand that Peter Thiel takes Lord of the Rings extremely seriously. We're not talking saw the movies, like the battles. We're talking a man who has named multiple companies and funds after objects from Middle-earth, Palantir, Mithril, Valar. If you've ever met someone whose entire personality is one book, multiply it by a venture portfolio. In Tolkien's world, a Palantir is a seeing stone. You look into it and you can see far-off places, hidden things, events across the world. Very useful. There's just one catch, and it's a big one, and we'll come back to it, because Thiel apparently read the same page everyone else did and decided the catch was a feature. But back up. Before the seeing stones, before the billions, Thiel was a kid who was very, very good at being right when other people were wrong, and absolutely unable to let it go. Nationally ranked chess player. Stanford law degree. A brief, unhappy stint as a corporate lawyer that he reportedly described as a place everyone was desperate to get into and desperate to escape, which honestly is the most relatable thing about him. The through line, the thing that explains everything that comes next, is that Thiel built an entire worldview around a single question. What does everybody believe that's actually wrong? He'd later turn that into a famous interview question. What important truth do very few people agree with you on? Most people ask that. Panic. Thiel built a career on having an answer ready, and in the late 1990s, his answer was money. Chapter 2. A fortune built on catching liars. The company was PayPal, and the dream was beautiful and a little unhinged. A new kind of money, digital, borderless, floating, free of governments. Very 1,999. Very, we will change the world from a sublet office. There was just one problem, and the problem was people, specifically criminals. Because the moment you build a frictionless way to move money around the planet, you have also built a frictionless way to steal money around the planet. Fraud nearly killed PayPal. At one point, they were losing millions a month to it, losses growing faster than the company could grow. A beautiful machine bleeding out. So PayPal did the thing that actually matters for our story. They stopped trying to catch fraud one transaction at a time by hand and started building software that looked at everything at once, all the accounts, all the transfers, all the weird little patterns, and flagged the connections a human would never spot. A web of behavior with the spider sitting in the middle going, that one and that one, those two know each other. It worked. PayPal survived, sold to eBay in 2002, and Thiel walked away with a reported fortune in the range of $200 million. He was in his mid-30s, freshly rich, free to do anything. And here's the part that separates a rich guy from a consequential one. Most people, at that fork, optimize for comfort. Thiel optimized for a pattern he'd noticed. He looked at the anti-fraud engine PayPal had been forced to build, the one that found hidden humans inside an ocean of data, and he thought, the credit card thieves aren't the only people hiding in there. Then, in the background of all of this, the world had already changed. It was 2001, and a frightened country was about to start asking a new question out loud. Chapter 3. Selling a crystal ball to people who don't believe in magic. After September 11th, the United States government developed an enormous, anxious appetite. It wanted to see. It had mountains of data travel records, financial records, communications sitting in 100 separate piles that didn't talk to each other, and a gnawing fear that the next catastrophe was hiding somewhere in the gaps between those piles. Thiel's pitch, founded in 2003 with a team including engineer Joe Lonsdale, Stephen Cohen, and a strange, brilliant philosopher named Alex Karp, was essentially, we already solved a version of this problem at PayPal. Let us point the same idea at your piles. Now, here is where most people get the company wrong. So listen close, because this is the actual insight. Palantir's bet was not, we'll build an AI that catches bad guys. The bet was subtler and, frankly, smarter. It was, the data already contains the answer. The problem isn't seeing, it's that no human can hold 10 million records in their head at once. So don't replace the analyst. Build the analyst a seeing stone. A screen where all the scattered piles snap together into one picture, and a trained human can follow a thread from a phone number to a bank account to a name. That's the whole magic trick. Palantir didn't sell a robot oracle, it sold connection. It made invisible relationships visible, and it did it for clients' intelligence agencies, the military who could not exactly post a job listing that said wanted, startup to help us surveil. Which brings us to the contrarian masterstroke. Everyone told Thiel this market was impossible. Governments don't buy from 20-person startups. Spies don't trust Silicon Valley. The sales cycle is measured in geological time. All true. And all beside the point, because Thiel wasn't betting the sale would be easy. He was betting the demand was bottomless and permanent. That fear, once a government tastes the feeling of seeing everything, does not go back to seeing less. He was right. Palantir ground through years of nearly no revenue, kept alive partly by an investment arm of the CIA and by Thiel's own conviction, until the contracts finally came. And then they didn't stop. Intelligence, defense, police departments. Eventually, corporations using the same engine to hunt fraud, supply chain snarls, and inefficiency. The crystal ball, it turned out, had an enormous addressable market. Chapter 4. The price of seeing everything. Now let's talk about the catch, because I promised you a catch, and Tolkien wrote it right into the story. In Lord of the Rings, the Palantiri are not safe. The thing nobody mentions when they name their company after one is that the seeing stones are dangerous to the person looking. A character who uses one, a steward, a leader, thinks he's gathering intelligence, thinks he's the one in control, but the stone has been compromised. The enemy is feeding him a curated, terrifying view of the world, and slowly, looking into it, he loses his mind. He sees only threats. He despairs. The tool that was supposed to give him power makes the decision for him. That is an astonishing thing to name your surveillance company after, and it's the part Thiel's critics would spend 20 years pointing at. Here's the genuine tension, and I'm not going to resolve it cheaply for you. A tool that connects every data point about a person is incredibly good at finding a terrorist. It is exactly as good at finding a journalist's source, a dissident, a protester, an ordinary person who simply ended up in the wrong pattern. The software does not have an opinion about which of those it's pointed at. It just sees. The values come entirely from the hand on the controls, and Palantir's defenders argue, reasonably, that the answer to scary tools is oversight, not pretending the tools won't get built. Its critics argue, also reasonably, that a machine for seeing everything will always, eventually, be pointed at everyone. And Thiel himself? He's not a comfortable mascot for either side. This is a man who has called competition something for losers, who's openly questioned whether freedom and democracy are even compatible, who quietly funded a lawsuit that bankrupted an entire media company that had wronged him, a campaign reported years after the fact, framed at the time as one furious billionaire's private vendetta. Whatever you think of that, it tells you something about the worldview behind the seeing stone, that the people with the clearest vision should be the ones deciding what the rest of us are allowed to do. That's not a software opinion. That's a political one. And it was baked into the company from the first day. Chapter 5. The stone looks back. So here we are. The joke from 2003, naming your spy company after a wizard's crystal ball, is now a publicly traded company worth tens of billions of dollars, woven into governments and corporations around the world. The laughing stopped a long time ago. But step back and look at what Thiel actually got right, because it's stranger and bigger than he built good software. He didn't predict a product, he predicted a mood. He looked at a wealthy, frightened post, 9/11 world, and understood, before almost anyone, That we were about to spend the next 20 years quietly choosing the feeling of safety over the fact of privacy, and that whoever built the infrastructure for that choice would own a piece of the future. He didn't create the demand, he just saw it coming and got there first with a screen. That's the contrarian's real gift, and it's a colder one than the movies make it look. It was never about being smarter in the room. It was about being willing to look directly at something the rest of us would rather not, our own fear, and what we'll trade to soothe it and then build the store. The man read the wizard books too closely and took away a lesson most readers miss. He didn't see the seeing stone as a warning. He saw it as a market. And the most unsettling part of the whole story isn't that he was strange for thinking that way. It's that he was right. So the open question I'll leave you with isn't about Thiel at all. It's about us. The seeing stone got built because there was demand, and the demand was ours. Every time we said we'd give up a little privacy to feel a little safer, Thiel just had the nerve to look at that trade clearly and put a price on it. The stone is still out there. It's bigger now. And here's the thing about a tool that sees everything. It never tells you when it's looking back. So before you go, one question worth sitting with. If someone built a machine that could see everything, and the only thing keeping it pointed at the bad guys was the character of whoever holds the controls, how much do you actually know about the hand on the controls? Think about it.